Cuando me digan.
Buenos días a todos. Edgardo, ya podríamos comenzar si querés. Gracias.
Ok, bueno, nuevamente buen día, ¿qué tal? Soy Edgardo Zablocki, rector de UCEMA. Y bueno, doy inicio a una nueva sesión de la Cátedra Naumann. Y bueno, como se han dado cuenta, toda esta sesión va a ser traducida, van a tener que optar por el idioma, español, inglés. Yo voy a bajarme el sonido porque estoy escuchando la traducción al inglés. Listo, ahí está. Perdonen, pero tenía un problema técnico de mi impericia utilizando esto. Ahora sí, bueno, esta es una nueva sesión de la Cátedra Naumann. La cátedra comenzó en mayo del 2020, bueno, con el objetivo de tener este espacio de reflexión que se generó a través de la Fundación Friedrich Naumann para Libertad y UCEMA. Como ha sucedido en todos los eventos anteriores, va a ser presidido por esta sesión por el doctor Lars Andrés Richter, que es el representante de Naumann Argentina, a quien, bueno, ahora le cedo la palabra y va a presentar a nuestro expositor de hoy. Realmente es un privilegio. Lars, bueno, todo tuyo y mil gracias como siempre.
Muy bien, muchas gracias, Edgardo. Entonces, bienvenido en el nombre de la Fundación Friedrich Naumann para la Libertad también. Gran placer que estén con nosotros hoy, esta mañana. Yo quiero presentar a nuestro expositor, el expositor del día de hoy. Bueno, se trata de mi colega Thomas Volkmann. Thomas Volkmann, bueno, es subdirector del Instituto Liberal. El Instituto Liberal, bueno, es una parte de la fundación, más que una parte, es el think tank, el tanque de pensamiento de la fundación. Y bueno, la oficina del Instituto de Libertad, el Instituto Liberal se ubica en Berlín, o en capital. Thomas Volkmann es, digamos, el hombre de las cifras, de las estadísticas de la fundación. Él conoce muy bien la historia, especialmente la historia del Partido Liberal. Thomas Volkmann estudió, entre otros, ciencias sociales, ciencias políticas, historia y filosofía. Él trabajó, bueno, tanto en el Partido Liberal, en el FDP, eso es la abreviatura del Partido Liberal. Él trabajó en la sede de este partido y en el bloque del partido, en el Parlamento. Y bueno, en su época dirigió, entre otros, la oficina del jefe de este bloque, Dr. Wolfgang Gerhardt, que fue un presidente de la fundación también. El bloque en Alemania, el bloque en el Parlamento es un órgano, digamos, muy importante en la vida política. Thomas Volkmann, después de su tiempo en el partido y en el bloque, trabaja para la fundación a partir del 2007 y bueno, es responsable, bueno, de los análisis de los programas electorales de los partidos, pero trabajó también como jefe del Departamento de la Comunicación y de Educación. Bueno, entonces, mañana Alemania va a recibir nuevo gobierno, nuevo canciller. Bueno, entonces es un timing excelente. Escuchamos al análisis de Thomas Volkmann de la situación política actual en Alemania. Muchas gracias, Thomas, por su tiempo y, bueno, gracias a ustedes por su atención.
Yeah, no, I think it's up to me. I hope I'm good to be heard. Very warm greetings from Germany, from Berlin, to you all listening. I'm quite sorry that I can't see you. Would have liked to do this face to face, but never mind. It's just these pandemic times that force us to do things different from how we did them otherwise. As you can see behind me, as you look at the picture, evening is falling on Berlin. It's getting dark outside. And so I'm quite envious on you being on the midst of the day, but let's keep this short and get to the facts that I want to tell you. That I would rather be in Buenos Aires now than to be in Berlin, I think is understood well. Okay, let's get to it. I'm going to share my screen with you so you can see the presentation in case I find it. There it is. So there you are. I hope it's all readable. If not, please give me a sign or something. What are we talking about? We're talking about results and effects of the federal elections that Germany had in September. We're talking about the change of government and if this was or will be a change of policy at all. What happened? First, let us look at the plain results of the federal elections we had on September 26th. This is not working, very good. Federal elections, results and reasons. Don't be confused. I will not mix this up and I won't tell much of these numbers, just showing you the effects of it. To sum it up quite sober, what was the result? You see a large red block. So these are the Social Democrats who won the elections, the federal elections. The black block is the Conservatives, the Christian Union, Christian Democratic Union, that reached only 24.1% and was the second strongest party. So in our terms, they lost the elections. You see the Greens, it's the green bloc, formerly number 6 in parliament, raised to number 3 in parliament. And you see the yellow bloc, which I favor very much to talk about, is the FDP, keeping its strong position in these elections with 11.5%. The right-wing AfD, which calls itself an alternative for Germany, AfD, Alternative für Deutschland, lost votes down to 10.3. They were third strongest party in parliament before and aren't anymore. And this dark red block over there, 4.9%, are the left-wing Linke, the left party, who has almost been kicked out of parliament due to the 5% rule we have here, but managed to win 3 direct mandates and reaches parliamentary representation because of that special rule in Germany. I won't get any deeper into that, just to see red ones won, black ones lost, yellow ones succeeded very fine, green ones even better. That's the points that I wanted to show you. Next one. I'm sorry I couldn't translate this diagram, this bar into English because I would have had to change it. Now you see just what I wanted to show you. The red block is the largest block. The blue blocks torn together are the Christian Union. The yellow block is the FDP. The German Bundestag contains 736 members, which is quite a lot, given the fact that it usually is meant to have only 598. But there is some specialty about German electoral system, which I don't want to bore you with. So let's take it as it is. It's a lot of people having mandates in the German parliament. And now the SPD has 206 seats and the CDU has 197. You have to take these two together, CDU and CSU. The FDP is 92. So let's see what's always so interesting in looking at elections, and this is who won and who lost. You can clearly see the black bar shows really down. It's a huge bar and shows downward. The red bar and the green bar show upward quite. So they are the winners together, of course, with the FDP, who was in some kind stable in a positive way and won 0.7 points to it. To keep it short and simple, the 3 ones that won votes are the ones who are going to build the government from now on, maybe from tomorrow on, maybe next week, but they will. We hope so. there's massive loss for right-wing and left-wing parties, which to a liberal opinion isn't a bad effect of an election. So this is quite good. If I could turn this a little bit, no. So I have to tell you, I don't know if you see it here on the right side. It's a very astounding effect that the CDU and the CSU together lost 49 members, and the SPD as well as the Greens lost won each 50 members. So self-confidence on the left side of the SPD and the Green side is definitely boosted by this election. And there is a sort of meltdown on political left-wing and right-wing sides, which is shown here and is shown by members of parliament. And to my opinion, it's not very disturbing. Now, let's get to the reasons for this. And I pointed these out on opinion polls that occurred and were asked for shortly before the elections. First point is there was a clear need and a wish for reform. The question was, would you, if you think about the times after the elections, would you rather go and wish for substantial change in Germany? Would you just like a few course corrections? Or do you think things could or should stay as they are and they were? And a clear majority said they want changes. Those who wished for substantial change, they raised their vote by 21 percentage points. It was 19% who said this in 2017, and there was 40% who said they want a clear change in 2021. This to me is one sign of a clear course correction wish. And if you look at the young voters, they're even more into clear change. Second reason, honesty, always a factor in politics, as you know. Those parties who won the elections had a clearly better image. The question was, do you think that Greens, SPD, FDP, and all the others is a party that before the elections tells the voters the truth about its political aims and intentions? Those on top, you see here, Greens, SPD, and FDP, were the ones who were voted the best in this question. Those who lost the elections were the ones who were least in this point. So I think CDU and CSU had an image problem in this context, even with their own membership, as you see here, which is quite astounding. Only 2/3 in the CDU members say that the CDU says before the elections what they want to do afterwards. Third point, I'm going to do it a bit quickly. Topics. The main topics were social security, economy, labor, and third, environment and climate. Social security is clearly connected with social democrats. Economy is clearly connected with Free Democrats, with the FDP, with the liberals, and environment and climate clearly connected with the Greens. So all the topics that the people held as important were paying on the debts of, on the accounts of the three parties that won the elections. Fourth point, contentment. How satisfied are you with the work of the government? That was asked shortly before the elections. Only 43% were confident, were satisfied with the government. And the only party members that were really satisfied with the government were those of the CDU, CSU. The coalition partners, the SPD, were half and half. Only 50% of the SPD members were confident with what the SPD had done in the government. Quite astounding. And there was mood for change. That was my fifth point. Clearly to be seen, if the decision were up to you, which party should lead the next federal government? And only 28% wanted the CDU and CSU to go on with governing. 38% wanted a clear change towards the SPD. So this election, as I may sum it up, seems to sound the wind of change, as I'd like to spell it. You see it within this chart. They asked the young voters what they voted for. Young voters, which are persons from 18 to 24 years, voted for the Greens and for the FDP. And even more, if you ask the first voters, which are those who are 18 to 23, the first voters voted mostly for the FDP, and second mostly, it's a slight lead, but it is one, and second mostly for the Greens, which is in Germany quite a sign for what is about to happen, because you have to say, of course, the elders are numerically still the biggest group of voters, and they usually vote for conservatives or social democrats. But there's a change going on in Germany because, you know, as I know every day, getting older means being closer to the end. And so the voters for the parties are getting less and less for CDU and SPD. Well, no more of this stuff. Let's talk about the effects. And please don't be confused by the next chart. I don't want to talk about everything that is shown in there. I just wanted to show the direction of it. The party system in Germany changes clearly. The German political system has for many years been dominated by the two greater parties, SPD and CDU, which are black and red in this chart and every other chart, as shows the diagram. In many years, there's been a vast majority of red and black. Each one of them had over the years results of more than or close to 40%, both of them. This changed in 1983 when the Greens occurred, besides CDU, SPD and FDP. And it changed even more in 1990 after German unification when the Left Party entered parliament. But nevertheless, there was blocks in Germany, as the people said. There was one bloc with civil or bourgeois bloc with CDU, CSU and FDP. And on the other hand, the left bloc or progressive bloc containing SPD, Greens and the left. So this gave the black and the red party the opportunity to choose from a wide range of parties. As in the course of time, the smaller parties raised their amount of votes. This opportunity for the bigger parties shrunk, and so it came to grand coalitions, which means that the two greatest parties work together, which are black and red, as you see. This election in 2021, I hope you see it. I don't have the pictures here. This election is the first one when you see the gray bar, which means the rest, except for CDU, CSU, and SPD, is bigger than those two together. It's 50.1%. So the formerly greater parties in Germany no more have a majority. This is what I think are the effects on the party system in Germany. There's another effect that you may have heard of because, and I slide this slide open, this of course is the end of an era. We had 16 years of chancellorship by Angela Merkel. Just to say so, if a few days more had been given to her, she would have topped Helmut Kohl as some kind of an eternity chancellor. He has had 16 years and I think 2 months, and she had, I think, 10 days less than he has had. So there is a lot of young voters who have never, ever seen another chancellor than Angela Merkel. And there's a joke going on where a 15-year-old girl reads the newspaper, just calls her dad and says, "Dad, they're talking about a male chancellor. Is that possible in Germany?" And so the diagnosis to this is the CDU-CSU fell apart, broke down after Angela Merkel had announced that she would not run for chancellorship in 2021. I've talked to Lars André about this, and we're always arguing if this is a real reason or if conservatism in Germany is going down. But I think it really is a reason that Angela Merkel, as some kind of tie that bound the conservatives together in Germany, said she would not be there anymore. She bound the conservatives, though she herself is obviously not a heartfelt conservative. And this is the difference to 1998, when Helmut Kohl had not been re-elected. There were enough persons within the Conservative Party who could keep things together, including Angela Merkel. Now, to my opinion, and we may talk about this if you like, there aren't. Yes, another effect. And I found, to my opinion, a very nice picture to this that tells it. With Angela Merkel still in chair, but there's one man rushing up to her, and you can almost hear him say, "Come on, lady, get up, it's my seat." So he's going to be elected tomorrow, but who is he? No one knows him. Who is that man? The new federal government, the next point. A short introduction to the person you just saw, just in case you've never heard of him. This is Olaf Scholz, the designated German Chancellor, from left to down. Just take the lowest picture and you see how he's today, but people change. And I just wanted to show you this. This is Olaf Scholz. There's a question that arises directly when you talk about Scholz, and this is Chancellor Scholz the new Angela Merkel? One could well say so, because he served as her vice chancellor since March 2018. Previously, he served as first mayor of Hamburg. Then he was the deputy leader to the Social Democratic Party. He was general secretary, and he entered the first Merkel government in 2007. But even more. It's interesting, Scholz is said to be quite comparable to Merkel in his sobriety, some say his boredom, and he's much more a technician than the politician of glowing heart. And that's what always was said about Angela Merkel, who's a physicist and who's a technician and a scientist as well. And so someone in the internet took the pictures and really morphed them. And I think that's quite a thing that meets it. So let us pretend that everything will work out fine, and the new German government, the so-called Ampel coalition, the traffic light coalition, will be inaugurated next week. This is the new federal government. I won't get into any details, just to keep it short. Olaf Scholz will be the chancellor if elected tomorrow. And this is why it's called a traffic light coalition. You see the red ministers, 7 by numbers. You see the green ministers, 5 by numbers, and the liberal ministers, 4 by numbers, which is the kind of strength within this coalition. No. Let's talk about the topics and issues that are connected with this. Will this coalition be stable is a question many people in Germany ask, because it's the first one that a traffic light or an Ampel coalition is in power and will be in power in Germany. How could this happen? That's what many, especially on the conservative side, many people ask themselves. Was it an accident? Was it pure coincidence that happened within the German elections in September? I don't think so, and I've shown you the charts before. I think the charts are convincing. There was a mood for change. It was quite narrow between CDU and SPD, but I think that the mood in the time was clearly going towards the SPD. And so this is what came out. It wasn't an accident. I think it was the will of the German voters. Did anybody want this? Yes, I said this before. Sure. If you believe in opinion polls, as I shown you in the charts, there were people who wanted this to happen. Who won and who lost within the coalition negotiations? I don't know how much you become aware of in Argentina about the German coalition negotiations. I've had some before. As I told you, I'm far above the 60 years age, and I've had some coalition negotiations. And these ones were quite unanimously, they were almost friendly with each other. They argued, of course, but they argued in disguise, so to say. They didn't show it to the public, and they didn't want to to bully each other out. And this was something that I have never seen before. So there's hope. I think all of them won. The red ones won, the green ones won, and the yellow ones won. There's no losers. But still, I think there are some warning signs. It's, as I said, the first traffic light coalition, the first ample coalition. It's never been tried on a federal level up to now. And especially the FDP and the Greens have had differences throughout the years in their political opinions that cannot, if they are, it's okay for me, but that cannot have vanished in 2 months since the elections. Other questions are, will the left-wing Social Democrats be quiet? Will the left-wing or the fundamentalist Greens be quiet when the first arguments come? How will they get along with each other? First signs are showing harmony. Prospects are good because, and that's one very strict reason for me, there is no alternative for all of them. None of the parties mingled together in this coalition has any alternative without losing power. So, next one. What will the politics in Germany be like? Probably. This coalition contract bears the title Dare to Make More Progress. And so this, to my opinion, shows the direction that it's going into. I've read the 177 pages, not very intensively, but with, I think, some kind of clear view. And so this is progress. This is innovation. Main topics will be, and that shows which political parties and interests are involved. Dealing with the pandemic, of course, every party would have had to do this. But dealing with climate change, regaining economic strength, defending our democratic values in international negotiations, dealing with the changes by digitalization, modernizing state and administration, modernizing the infrastructure, then the questions of equality, diversity, Germany as an immigration country, and then, my matter, dealing with an aging society with pensions and all that. So I think the main matters of this coalition contract are transparency, participation, collaboration as principles of government action. And it all shows an optimistic mood. And I'm not very free-giving with this word, but I think it's a sort of departure in Germany that shows. So, prospects. Will there be quarrels about the political course between left-wing and right-wing politicians within Greens and SPD? I think so. Very likely this coalition will, like its predecessors, not be heaven on earth for the three parties and their followers. I definitely think so. But this is a coalition by reason. It's not a love marriage. It's just a coalition by reason. If they began to fail in their major issues, there might be argument on missing the climate targets, on inflation, on unemployment, many others, but they are willing to try. Second question, will CDU-CSU, will the Conservatives recover from the great defeat? And it was great defeat. Depends on how successful the coalition will be, to my opinion. I do not believe that there will be a general swing to conservatism in Germany in the next 4 years, if the coalition does well, or even if it does not. I don't believe in conservatism coming up again. Is the Ampel, is the traffic light coalition likely to go full-time? I think so, if they manage to keep away from mistrusting each other. I think the chances are good. Their tasks they are facing are enormous, definitely. But so are the chances for the FDP as well as for the SPD and for the Greens. Will the FDP succeed? I think so. And connected to this, and this is how I like to sum it up, and I think I'm quite into the half an hour, which I was told not to exceed. This definitely could be the start of a new and successful era in Germany, to my opinion, and I hope you can follow me in that. Thanks for listening.
Muchas gracias, Thomas Volkmann, por su interesante y estimulante presentación. Vamos a pasar entonces a la sección de las preguntas y les agradecemos a todos por los comentarios y las preguntas que han estado realizando durante la estimulante presentación de esta mañana. Tenemos una pregunta de Karl Leopold. La primera pregunta que hace Karl para Thomas es si el mismo proceso de desconcentración de los partidos tradicionales mayoritarios, CDU, CSU y SPD, también ocurre en España y menciona al PP y al PSOE respectivamente. Entonces la pregunta de Karl para Thomas es si esto es un fenómeno especialmente alemán o que también es pertinente a otros países europeos.
Ooh, this is quite, for the beginning, quite a difficult question, yeah, I have to admit. Well, many people say, I'm not the only one to say this, that the times are getting harder for the major political ideologies. If I get the question right, this was the question. I think that politics in Europe are getting more into connecting the up to now or up to then smaller parties and getting them into solution finding than the people trusting in the great or up to then greater parties to solve their problems by being great parties. I think the people read more, get better informed, always looking on both sides of the story, and they are looking for who gives the best solutions and not who's the strongest and can dump down the others, so to say. I hope this meets the question.
Muchas gracias, Tomás, por la respuesta. Tengo otra pregunta de Jorge Riaboy. Pregunta, ¿cuál es el rol futuro para Alemania dentro de la Unión Europea y también en el resto del mundo?
I thought the first question was difficult, but it's getting more difficult by the next one. The future role will... let's get behind the pandemic, I think. Let's just clear this up and let us see what the pandemic has raised as damage afterwards. And then I think you can see which country in Europe or worldwide plays which role. Germany, up to now, I think, has dealt quite well with the pandemic or with its effects on economy, on society, and so on. I think other countries in Europe have dealt good as well, because they dealt with it in quite a different way than Germany did, with the words of civil rights, with the words of leaving the liberty to people, or so. So if so to say, if the dust is slowly clearing away after the pandemic, I think there will be signs how Europe will be put together afterwards. Germany will not, as far as I understood the coalition contract, Germany will not run for being Europe's dominative power or whatever. I think it's more on collaboration in Europe than on dominating other countries.
Muchas gracias, Tomás, por esta respuesta. Tenemos también otra pregunta bastante interesante por parte de Julio Ang. Le pregunta si cree que la cuestión de defensa va a tener más importancia en este nuevo gobierno alemán.
Of defense politics. Did I get it right? Yeah. We all hope not. As you may see, as you may have known, there is some problem raising its head in the Ukraine, between Russia and the Ukraine. Maybe there is something showing what we have to deal with, and I think Europe is on the way to more unification and more unanimous acting, and maybe this will be the first stress test to Europe. There are clear rules that Germany is under. It's, I think, 2% of its of the money to share is on defense measures and so. But I do not hope, and I didn't read this in the coalition contract, that defense politics is going to play a greater role in German politics than it did before.
Muchas gracias, Tomás, por esta pregunta, por esta respuesta. Tenemos una muy relacionada que en parte ya la has comentado. Ole Yagno le pregunta cuál va a ser la nueva política exterior de Alemania hacia los países de Europa Oriental, especialmente Ucrania. Así que aquí podríamos hablar algo también de Nord Stream 2. Me imagino que puede ser interesante hablar de ese tema.
Yeah, I'm not very profiled in international politics, so please take this as my answer and not an official answer by the International Department of the Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom. I think that every German government is well in building friendship towards East and West, and I think, if I get it right, that the new foreign minister, designated Minister Annalena Baerbock, is looking towards Brussels, where I think she's going to have her first travel to coordinate her work with the European Union officials. Also will be looking towards the East. But I think that Germany is not one major player to deal with the conflict, or if it is one, if it gets one, the conflict or the thing between Russia and Ukraine. Nevertheless, Germany within the NATO, of course, is a part of the NATO strategy. And as one has heard, the NATO and America will help Ukraine if there is any, let me call it, trouble down there. Not in war measures or so, but I think in the negotiations.
Muchas gracias por esta respuesta, Tomás. Tenemos dos preguntas muy relacionadas, así que podemos juntarlas, de Javier Areco y Karl Leckpold. La pregunta es: ¿cuál va a ser la actitud de la nueva coalición de gobierno alemana de cara a la inmigración? Y una repregunta de Karl Leckpold en este tema es si un enfoque más suave que la gestión saliente de Angela Merkel puede generar un regreso de la CDU, CSU o incluso de la AfD.
So migration politics will definitely be different from migration politics of a conservatively led coalition. In the coalition contract, there are some things said about migration politics that Germany should take. It's not going to be a more open country in the sense of we're opening every border, just come on in. It's more a politics that's does like the Canadians do. It's more to do with immigration, on telling who we need and who may get in, except for, of course, the possibility of asylum to be held in Germany. But I think it's a stronger point, especially of the FDP, to say we want a migration policy that really is in our interest. Nevertheless, of course, what is there in asylum politic and what was there? And with all the crises that we're facing, there will definitely not be a change to the worse to the predecessor coalition.
Muchas gracias, Tomás, por esta respuesta. Siguen llegando las preguntas de los asistentes también. Tenemos una pregunta de Marina, que le pregunta cómo cree que va a impactar la actual pandemia en la agenda del nuevo gobierno y si va a haber cambios en la gestión de este tema respecto a la gestión del gobierno de Angela Merkel.
The challenges by the pandemic are clearly to be seen in the coalition contract as far as finance aspects are affected, because it's getting obvious that the pandemic is costing a lot of money. And so German politics have to have an eye on how this money can be generated to deal with the further effects of the pandemic. And most sadly, the pandemic isn't getting much better in Germany, if not getting worse. And so the money needed will rise to an amount that every coalition will have great work with to deal with. And so this maybe is going to be even harder for the new coalition than it was for the one before. Of course, for the coalition that now comes to an end, the main problem was to deal with things they had never dealt with before. Everything was new about the pandemic. Everything was for the first time. Every decision was unprecedented. And now it is to deal with things not getting better as we all hoped, but still remaining. And if you read, which you do not have to, because it's not an interesting literature so far, if you read the coalition contract, you see on almost every page, or let's say every second or third page, has something to do with this pandemic. If it is socially, if it is on economy, if it is on education, if it is on the health system, the pandemic is quite the spirit, or the ghost that is flying above this coalition contract, and we will all have lots of work with it. So it really influences German politics vastly.
Muchas gracias, Tomás, por estas respuestas. Tenemos muchos comentarios y muchos agradecimientos en el chat por parte de nuestros asistentes por esta charla y estas respuestas que estás brindando. Y muchas preguntas. Estoy tratando de diversificarla para las que ya hayan, los que no hayan aún tenido su pregunta formulada la puedan tener, pero les agradecemos a todos por las preguntas que siguen realizando para Tomás. Esta pregunta es de Jesús Alcalá y le consulta si cree que existirán cambios en la postura de Alemania hacia Europa en materia de energía. Sobre todo menciona Jesús entendiendo las diferentes visiones sobre energías de transición que tienen Francia y Alemania.
to cut it short, definitely, yes. There will be change in energy politics to the predecessor government, quite from the point that the Greens are now in charge. And the Greens in Germany, the ecological party, has different opinions on energy systems, on energies to be chosen, and the energy mix than a Christian Union, than the Conservatives have. The coalition contract in this means is not very specified now. I think it's too specific to write it down in such a document. But what the Greens, or as well the SPD and the FDP as well, said before in the election campaign really shows that there is no going back to something like an energy politics, how it was, like it was before. There is a great discussion about reinstalling nuclear energy in Europe. To my opinion, as I read the German newspapers and the German party papers, for Germany, there does not seem to be a way back to nuclear energy. And that's one main difference to the former coalition that we had. As well, there is the clear option to move out of carbon technology. Decarbonizing Germany is one of the main matters of German energy politics in the next 4 years. And afterwards, just saying they want to do this, they have to say how they want to raise or win the German energy potentials that are needed. But I think in Europe, there are other countries, just like France, just like I think other countries like Poland or so, who are very much more into nuclear energy than Germany will be in these 4 years at least.
Muy bien, Tomás, muchísimas gracias. También Jesús le agradece por su respuesta. Tengo una pregunta de Karl Leopold sobre el rol del Partido Liberal en esta coalición, ¿no? Porque menciona si se puede encontrar un paralelismo entre la colaboración que el FPD le presta al Partido Socialdemócrata durante los gobiernos de los cancilleres Willy Brandt y Helmut Schmidt con el rol de Hans-Dietrich Genscher. ¿Cuán liberal puede ser, la pregunta es de Karl, el FPD junto a los líderes socialdemócratas?
That's a dangerous question, of course, because I almost tend to answer it not under 30 minutes of time. And so, no, I'm going to keep it short, promise. Yes, there is one comparison of the new Ampel coalition to the one in the late 60s, early 70s, which was the Willy Brandt era in Germany. When, I do not know if all of you are familiar with German history in this point, in 1969, the FDP decided to build a coalition with the SPD, who was the minor party in parliament, because the CDU-CSU was stronger in the elections, but the FDP made the point as the third party, decided to build a coalition with the SPD and somehow overruled the Conservatives. This time was very much of a special time. It was the late 60s. It was a time of protests, of student protests, of, as we said here, we, the elders, said, of opening the windows and dusting the house out and all that. There was really a need for progressive and for liberal and for not so, let's say, it's not so square politics. And now they had a slogan way back then. They had the slogan, trying more democracy. Let us dare more democracy. If you see the title, the front page of the new coalition contract now in 2021, it shows, let us dare more progress. And this, of course, is a clear history and analogy to that time. More democracy, more progress. In Germany, it is not the time to wipe out some squareness and some conservativeness in the country, because Germany has changed a lot since the 70s. But it is time for innovation, for progress in that sense, for rethinking things, for being open for new measures, for new ideas. And as well as I told you about the substances will be transparency and participation, equality, diversity. These are points that the conservative side in politics doesn't have on their main agenda, but the three parties that are now finding together have it. And so equality, diversity, immigration, openness, all this is a trademark, can be a trademark for the new coalition. And this really is an analogy to the Willy Brandt coalition way back then, when innovation in a social sense was the point of the time. And now it is innovation as a social sense in another cohesion. So that's what I would say. It's very much time for liberal politics. If you do not take liberal as party politics, but as a mindset, a liberal mindset, which is within the Greens as well as parts, at least, of the SPD, and of course with the liberals. So I think it could be a very, very liberal coalition that now is raising its head.
Muy bien, muchas gracias Tomás por la respuesta. Gracias a todos los que están también dejando sus preguntas por escrito en el chat o en la sección de preguntas y respuestas. Y para los que han consultado por la disponibilidad de esta charla, va a estar en el canal de YouTube de la Universidad del UCEMA para que puedan ver la grabación. Les recomendamos que sigan la cuenta de la UCEMA para ver todas las actividades que realizamos en la universidad. En breve también les dejamos el link de acceso a todas las redes sociales de la UCEMA. Bien, tenemos nuevas preguntas, realmente, Tomás, no paran de llegar. Y hay dos preguntas que son similares en el tema. Una es de Juan Pablo Corlazzoli y otra es de Sabrina Corbacho, quien es estudiante de tercer año de la licenciatura en Ciencias Políticas de la Universidad del UCEMA. Y las preguntas son por la relación entre la nueva coalición de gobierno y la Unión Europea. Juan Pablo Corlazzoli en particular pregunta si la actitud de Alemania va a ser más proactiva sobre el actual acuerdo, la ratificación del actual acuerdo político y económico entre la Unión Europea y el Mercosur, respecto a la ratificación del mismo. Esa es la pregunta de Juan Pablo. Y Sabrina le pregunta si la nueva coalición de gobierno alemán va a mantener la línea pro Unión Europea desarrollada por Angela Merkel.
Not easy, not easy. As I said, the new foreign minister will come from the Greens, Annalena Baerbock. The Greens as a party are very, very Europe-friendly, so to say, and very much into connecting or building, shaping Europe. But the Greens on the left side, which they have, the fundamentalists, as they call themselves, are quite, not hostile, so to say, that's too hard, but quite oppositional to some trade contracts all over the world. And so I'm not sure if there's a cohesion or a coincidence between a pro-Europe mood within the Greens and a pro-free trade spirit within the Greens. I hope so. The coalition contract tells that the Greens are not formulating or not pushing forward their fears or whatever against trade, free trade contracts. But we will see. Ms. Baerbock is not yet in office and will have to form her politics and her policies, and we will see.
Muchas gracias, Tomás, por esta respuesta. Tenemos otra pregunta de Carl Leopold relacionada con la respuesta sobre estos partidos y esta coalición. La pregunta de Carl apunta al rol de el Partido Socialdemócrata, ¿no? Que estuvo dentro de esta große coalición con Angela Merkel muchos años y que ahora va a estar liderando la nueva coalición de gobierno a través del canciller Olaf Scholz. La pregunta de Carl entonces es, la SPD ha prometido realizar cambios en la gestión de gobierno actual y Carl pregunta cuán creíbles esos cambios si la SPD ya ha sido parte del gobierno alemán como el junior partner de Angela Merkel. ¿Cómo ves este tema?
This is really something to speak about. Yeah, it's a pleasure, this question. Thank you very much. The SPD in the last 4 years wasn't, how should I say it? They did not really want to enter the coalition in 2017. The CDU tried to form some kind of a Jamaica coalition, which is called this way because of the flag of Jamaica, which shows black and green and yellow. And so black like the Conservatives, green like the Greens, and yellow like the Liberals, the FDP, tried to form a coalition, but I could speak a lot about it, but take it as it is. The FDP couldn't get into it. They couldn't do it for many reasons. And so there was no Jamaica coalition, and Germany was facing a time where no two parties wanted to build it. And I think the SPD was really not willing, but forced to do it because the federal president, Steinmeier, asked them to do so. I think I remembered correctly. Lars Andre, if I'm wrong, please correct me. Steinmeier, the German president, federal president, is from the SPD, and I think he was the one to tell them, come on, get in there and help the country. And so they went in there. They weren't there from the heart, but they were by reason as well. The CDU was quite dominant within or throughout these 4 years. And the SPD, I think they had ideas, but they couldn't manage to realize them or to put them into real world. And if you see how the SPD raised votes within the last 6 months, if you take spring 2021, the opinion polls showed the SPD at a point of 14, 15, 16%. Nobody really thought they would get into a coalition. Nobody thought they would lead the coalition. And so if the SPD hadn't shown something like a spirit for change or for dealing with German politics, they wouldn't have risen in opinion polls and wouldn't have won the elections. So there's my hope that the new people within the SPD may be the right ones to put this into reality. They're not all so new, as I said they were. They're in a new role now. They're the same persons as from 2017 to 2021, but they're in a new role and they really can form politics and really can move things forward, which they could not do within the CDU, CSU and SPD coalition. I hope this was understandable. I haven't quite I'm not quite ready with this, thinking about this point, but I hope this was understandable.
Difiero con eso, Tomás. Estuvo muy interesante y muy pertinente la respuesta a esta pregunta y a todas las que hemos recibido por parte de nuestros asistentes. Les agradecemos entonces a ustedes por haberse conectado y a Thomas Volkmann por su presentación y sus respuestas, y le doy la palabra al doctor Edgardo Zablocki.
Gracias Matías, y gracias tu rol, no sé, seleccionando, la dificilísima tarea de seleccionar preguntas. Veo en el chat que todavía quedan 20 preguntas por delante. El juntarlas, seleccionarlas y generar el diálogo que has generado con Tomás me parece fantástico. Realmente, muchísimas gracias. Tomás, bueno, muchas gracias por el privilegio de conocer un poquito más de algo que está lejos físicamente, pero estamos tan cerca, muchas veces en problemas similares, aun cuando parezca difícil imaginarlo. Muchas gracias. Lars, te paso a vos ahora la palabra.
Sí, bueno, gracias por mi parte también, Tomás. Muchas gracias. Excelente, como siempre un placer escucharte, tu análisis, tus comentarios, el contexto histórico y las perspectivas del futuro. Muchas gracias. Estamos en contacto y, gracias, lógicamente, como siempre, a Edgardo, a vos y a tu equipo, a Matías para la presentación, para la moderación, y a Nadia, lógicamente, también para asistir un poquito, y a la traductora. Siempre es un desafío también, una traducción simultánea. Entonces, excelente, muchas gracias. Y finalmente a ustedes, a los participantes, que tuvieron muchas preguntas, y estoy seguro que podríamos seguir una hora más charlando y discutiendo. Muchas gracias. Y nos vemos en el año que viene. Creo que eso fue el último módulo de la Cátedra Naumann en 2021, y continuamos en 2022. Gracias.
Gracias Lars, y bueno, gracias Nadia, gracias a todos, y gracias a ustedes por estar a esta hora del día. En realidad hay bastantes participantes de otros países latinoamericanos, me doy cuenta, así que cada uno tiene un horario distinto. Gracias a todos, que tengamos unas buenas fiestas y que tengamos un mucho mejor 2022. Gracias. Matías, te dejo cerrar.
Bueno, muchísimas gracias, doctores Richter y Zablocki. Muchas gracias también a Nadia, a Thomas Volkmann nuevamente, a la intérprete y a Andrés Bellido por su colaboración en esta charla. Les dejamos en el chat las páginas para que nos puedan seguir y puedan enterarse de las nuevas novedades de nuestras organizaciones, tanto la Fundación Friedrich Naumann para la Libertad en Argentina y la página de las redes sociales de la Universidad del UCEMA. Como comentaban los doctores Richter y Zablocki, este es el último encuentro de este año, pero les vamos a estar enviando información sobre el que vamos a preparar para 2022 y esperamos contar con su participación en este próximo año también. Muchas gracias a todos, excelente nuevo comienzo de año y seguimos en contacto.
Adiós y gracias.